Welcome to Founders Friday. This is a tell-all for revenue-obsessed folks, and we invite experts who are responsible for driving revenue for their companies to share their experience and to educate as well as to entertain throughout this process. So remember to share your secret sauce, have your responses be punchy, and let's have some fun with it, which we are. Yeah. My guest today is Alicia Balance, Director of Customer Success Operations at Affinity. Alicia brings over 10 years of sales and customer success operations experience at various B2B companies. She's a Bay Area native. She's recently moved to Denver and is taking up skiing. Alicia, thank you for joining us for this webcast today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So Alicia, last time we met was about a year ago that you were at a different company, and that you recently made that transition to Affinity. So tell us a little, tell us our audience a little bit about your customer journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I started in customer success with a small company called Compass at the time. I ended up leading a team there for a few years. I did briefly customer success operations, but the past 4 years or so, I've been doing sales operations. So sales operations at South Labs. And then most recently, when I met you, I was at Influx Data, managing not just sales operations, but also customer success. And so had a colleague who used to work with me at Compass, who's been at Affinity for 3 years. The investment that they've had in operations is really impressive. And so I just felt like this is kind of the best place to be right now.
Awesome. And you guys are doing great. Affinity, you described to me as a CRM for Dealmakers. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious, who are these Dealmakers and why do they use the CRM system?
Yeah, good question. So our Dealmakers are venture capital firms, private equity, investment banking, corp and biz dev, and they're really leveraging Affinity for their deal flow, pipeline management, executive talent pipeline as well, limited partners and so forth. But the really powerful thing that Affinity has is data automation and network intelligence. And so when you think about the makeup of those firms, a lot of what they do is really built off of networking. And so Affinity enriches that data and really provides them good insight into the strongest relationships they have across those organizations, making it easier for them to make those connections. So.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You've shared some of the growth numbers with me in the past about how the company's doing, and I didn't even imagine there would be that many deal makers out there.
I know.
Out there. But you guys have done you've had a recent $80 million raise as part of your Series C. Tell a little bit of the origin story for the company. How did it come about, and what's been the secret to its recent success?
So Ray and Shuby started this company in 2015. And I think they had a really keen eye for just the power of networking in general, right? You take relationships with you from college to your first job and so forth. And so, I think their vision, which has remained true, it's still our vision today, but it's to create a world where people can fully cultivate and harness a network to be successful. And that's still where we stand. And they've built something that fully supports that.
Very cool. And, tell us a little bit about how your team supports the customer success organization as part of this growth process. And what does that role look like? And what does the customer success role look like at Affinity?
Yeah, so they're responsible for a pretty significant upsell number. And so I think supporting them means various different things. We have grown our team significantly with Affinity's growth, which has been really exciting. So we've had to scale our team, which means at the beginning of this year, we've really had to reallocate accounts to align with, realigning books of business, but also regionally as well. Now we have like an East and West team. And then I think second to that is partnering with product and product marketing, really ensuring that the team has the resources and tools to show up to, roadmap conversations really well prepared and just really polished on those conversations.
Got it. And Alicia, you touched on something pretty interesting and unique about the way that customer success teams operate, which is the connection to the product team, right? Yeah. So maybe share a little bit more about that, right? How does that connection play out in serving the customer better? We don't often see that on the sales side when you're driving new revenue, whereas on expansion revenue, that's clearly important. So how do you see that play out at Affinity, for instance?
It's a really tight partnership. They are joining our meetings very regularly and giving us constant product updates as far as the roadmap is concerned. But I think also, most importantly, we're capturing a lot of that feedback from our customers directly in our Zendesk, but also directly to our customer success team. And so we've got, a pretty good loop of getting that information back to the product team and making sure that we're prioritizing that effectively against our roadmap as well.
Interesting. So it's also helping drive the product roadmap for the company.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Yeah. And we talked to a lot of companies, a lot of different teams, and the role of data comes up in these conversations. So I'm curious, for a customer success organization, what role does data and some of the tools that are necessary to move that data around play in driving success for your CSMs in the organization?
Yeah. Obviously, data is super important. So we leverage Looker as our BI tool. We have Tatango as our customer success tool. We use Affinity internally for our own pipeline management. So yeah, there's a lot of different tools and that we're trying to surface this information for the customer success team.
Got it. And so I'm assuming you're building out some metrics and dashboards, et cetera, and the KPIs that are used to measure success for these teams. What does that look like? Can you share a little bit some of the key metrics that help drive revenue and help manage the productivity of the CSM organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So our customer success organization today is support. We have an onboarding team and we have customer success. So our CSMs are really managed or measured against renewal and net expansion. Right. Our onboarding team is measured on MALUP, which is our monthly active license utilization percentage. I know it's a mouthful.
That on IQ test, you have to remember that when you join the company.
Yeah, exactly. And then our support team's really measured on their CSATs. So we've got, a 95% target for a CSAT. We have 75% for MALUP. And then, the CSM's really measured on that renewal and net expansion. So they've got some specific quotas and goals around that.
Got it. So 3 very distinct areas of measurement, depending on whether you're onboarding or driving expansion with that account. That's very cool. So now looking at the accounts, what signals do you look for to figure out which accounts are ready for expansion? You obviously have a pretty large install base. So how do you mine through that install base to determine which accounts are ready to move to a deeper relationship with your company?
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the powerful things about Affinity is we're enriching our own data. So part of that is Crunchbase data, PitchBook data, our own proprietary data. But, an easy one that we kind of look for seat expansion, for example, is we can see from a firm how many total employees they actually have, but how many licenses we have deployed. And so that's a great way for us to kind of target maybe other teams or business sectors that we just haven't yet penetrated. And then I think in addition to that, I mentioned earlier, we also just have metrics internally to show what parts of Affinity people have purchased and being able to kind of leverage and see if someone would benefit from Affinity Analytics or ADO or ADP or some of our other offerings.
Got it. Do you consider product usage at all as part of that equation? So, often we hear about companies and particularly B2B SaaS platforms that measure product usage data, but frequently it sits with the engineering team to determine the product roadmap. I'm curious if that relationship with engineering helps move some of that data into the customer success organization as well, and how does it get used?
Yeah, I mean, they've helped define a pretty good health score, and our health score is really comprised of utilization, time in product, and list views, which is a function within Affinity. And so we're actually looking at that health score. Onboarding takes about 45 days. And then once you're exiting that phase, at that 45-day mark, we're looking at that health score, and we want to make sure that you're at 75% or if not better. And so it's just a good measure for when we're handing off to the customer success team if there's any areas for them to focus in.
Got it. And are there any specific tools that you use to measure product usage, and how does that help drive some of the customers? The 3 metrics that you just talked about earlier on the customer success side. How do you draw that connection from product usage data to those metrics?
Yeah, so we use Amplitude to surface that information, and then the customer success team is actually able to extract that and show up to these EBRs with having really meaningful conversations about where they could be driving more adoption in the product, if they're underutilizing something, or if, there's an opportunity for expansion because they're just at full capacity. So I think that's been a help. That's a huge driver for them.
Got it. And Alicia, in our experience talking to other customers, we find that product usage data typically remains locked with engineering teams. So I imagine that your team probably got involved with helping unlock some of that data for the customer success side. What are some of the challenges that you experience when you're trying to do that? When you're trying to move data from, product usage data from engineering teams, which view it a certain way, to customer-facing organizations?
I don't think that's been quite a challenge for us. It's been pretty baked out and visible for the CSM team, but I do think, across the board, the thing that's challenging is consolidating data into one source, right? So I've mentioned we have Looker, we've got Tatango, we have Affinity. And so as we continue to scale, I think the thing that's going to become critical really quickly is how do we get that information visible to all of the go-to-market team? And so it's definitely something that's top of mind and one of our objectives, especially in the first half of this year as we continue to grow.
Got it. Yeah, no, you're right. And, the other thing that we've kind of noticed is that when we talk to a lot of companies, we see dashboards and metrics, KPIs, et cetera, that help you understand what's really going on in the business.
Yeah.
But then now that we're all living in a distributed, remote, hybrid world, employees are all over.
Right.
How do you drive actionability with the teams, right? So what are some of the strategies that can help you ensure that the customer success teams are focused on the right set of priorities and that they're actually moving the ball forward on those things?
Yeah. I know I'm going to sound super biased, but I truly do stand by the fact that our customer success team is an incredible standout team. They're so smart, they're sharp, they're polished, resourceful. I think the challenge that we're going to have is preserving that culture and that talent as we continue to grow. But as far as driving action, I think regardless of the function, having really clear, tangible goals from the top down, what's our North Star, what is my individual goal, and how do I know that it's achievable? I think we do a good job of ensuring people understand what the message and the intent is, but giving them the tools and resources and showing them how they can actually achieve those goals is incredibly important.
Great. No, that's cool. So look, you've had a pretty successful career and you continue to build your career in revenue operations. For someone that's just starting out in the tech industry and someone, and particularly women who are just starting out in the tech industry, what advice would you have for somebody in that position?
Stay hungry and stay curious. Definitely be open to new experiences. I think that if you could wear as many hats as you can, it's going to serve you well. And I think really the most important thing is step outside of your own organization, get to know the other departments, understand how they function. That's totally going to support any sort of change management that you're trying to achieve. And also, I just think it helps fostering better relationships within the organization. And the better you know the company, the better it's going to be for you to come up with solutions that make the most sense. So yeah.
That's great advice, Alicia. Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. You've covered a lot of ground today with us. You've talked about what it means to engage with the customer success team and drive expansion revenue with your customers, with your account base. What are some of the metrics that are important to measure, not just the onboarding, but also the expansion side of the business? And then, how data plays an important role in driving all of these metrics and KPIs. So as always, it's a pleasure to connect with you. I know you can be reached on LinkedIn. Is there any other way for our audience to reach out to you?
Yep, that's the best way. Feel free. I'm open.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. And for our audience, if you have any thoughts on data, on metrics, on driving revenue, please do reach out to us. We're always looking to continue this conversation outside of these webinars. You can find us at www.immersa.ai and look forward to continuing the conversation and moving the industry forward. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.